When you stop contacting a man, something powerful begins to happen. You shift the balance of energy in the connection. The dynamic that once pulled him in one direction suddenly turns inward. Silence becomes your statement, and that silence is louder than any message you could ever send. When a man is used to your attention, your words, your energy, your presence, he becomes comfortable. He may not even realize how much of his validation comes from your responses, your time, your availability. But the moment you pull back, the moment you stop reaching out, he begins to feel something he didn't expect. The absence of your energy creates space. And in that space, he faces two truths about himself and about you. The first thing a man will do when you stop contacting him is test the silence. He will wonder if you really meant it. He will replay your last words in his mind, trying to figure out what changed. He might convince himself that you are just busy, or maybe you're trying to make him chase. But deep down, he knows something shifted. The man who once took your messages for granted suddenly checks his phone more than usual. He scrolls through old texts. He notices the quiet. At first, he might not act. He might tell himself that he's fine, that he doesn't need to reach out, that he's still in control. But the truth is he feels the void you left, because silence has a way of revealing who truly values communication. When you no longer give him the comfort of your consistency, he begins to wonder if he ever deserved it in the first place. Your silence makes him face his own effort. He starts to realize how one-sided the connection might have been. When you always reached out first, he never had to. When you always checked in, he never needed to wonder. But now he's left with questions that only his own actions can answer. Should he reach out? Should he wait? Should he care? The moment you stop contacting a man, you are handing him the mirror. You're saying without words, it's your turn to show up. And that's when you find out who he really is. Because a man's reaction to your silence speaks louder than his reaction to your words. Some men, when faced with silence, will step up. They will feel the distance and move toward it. They'll send the text, they'll make the call, they'll ask what's wrong. Not because they're desperate, but because they realize they value what they were about to lose. They remember your energy, your kindness, your attention, and it stirs something inside them. They become aware of your worth in a way they never were before. They realize that connection takes effort, and that effort begins with initiative. This kind of man doesn't want to lose something real just because he failed to act. He recognizes that your silence isn't punishment, it's a boundary. It's your way of saying, I deserve reciprocity. And when he sees that he has a choice, step up or step away. But not every man reacts this way. Some will do the second thing. They will retreat. They will let the silence grow and convince themselves that it doesn't bother them. They'll distract themselves with work, friends, social media, anything that helps them pretend your absence doesn't sting. But late at night, when things are quiet, they'll feel it. They'll scroll through their phone and notice the missing name in their notifications. They'll remember the way your messages made them feel seen. They'll think about calling, but pride will whisper no. And that pride becomes their prison, because sometimes silence exposes not just who cares, but who's emotionally mature enough to admit it. When a man pulls away instead of stepping up, it doesn't mean you lost. It means you discovered the truth. You learned that your presence meant more to him than his willingness to keep it. And that realization is priceless, because love built on effort always lasts longer than love built on convenience. When you stop contacting him and he does nothing, you didn't lose him. You simply stopped carrying the weight of a one-sided connection. You stopped watering a seed that refused to grow. And that's strength. That's healing. That's clarity. Silence isn't a game. It's a statement of self-worth. It's saying, I won't chase what won't meet me halfway. It's choosing peace over anxiety. It's giving yourself the dignity of distance. Because every time you pull back, you give the universe space to show you what's real. The man who values you will close that distance. The one who doesn't will fade into it. Either way, you win. Because you are no longer chasing clarity, you are creating it. When you stop contacting him, you reclaim your emotional energy. You redirect it toward yourself. You stop waiting for a message that may never come and instead start writing the story of your own peace. You begin to realize that the power you thought he had was actually yours all along. It was in your attention, your care, your consistency. When you take those back, you take back control. You become the prize again, not because you made him chase, but because you remembered your value. The beautiful thing about silence is that it teaches both sides something important. For you, it teaches patience, strength, and the art of letting go. For him, it teaches accountability, awareness, and the reality of consequences. When you stop contacting him, he gets to feel what it's like to live without your presence. And sometimes that's the only lesson that sinks deep enough. Words can't do what distance can. A message can be ignored, but silence cannot, because silence is a mirror. It reflects everything someone refuses to see. A man who truly values you won't let silence stretch too long. He will feel the distance and want to close it. He will miss the sound of your voice, your humor, your support. He will remember how you made him feel like he mattered, and that feeling will push him to act. He won't want to risk losing that connection forever. And when he reaches out, you'll see his sincerity, not through his words, but through his consistency. Because real interest doesn't need convincing, it needs opportunity. But if he doesn't reach out, if the silence stays, then that's your answer. It's not rejection, it's revelation. It shows you that his comfort mattered more than connection. It reveals that he was only present when it was easy. And now that it required effort, he disappeared. That is not love, that is convenience. And you deserve better than convenience. You deserve commitment. You deserve communication. You deserve someone who reaches out even when it's hard. Stopping contact isn't about manipulation. It's about clarity. It's about breaking the cycle of emotional overinvestment. It's about choosing yourself after realizing that waiting is draining your spirit. It's about giving both of you the space to see the truth without the noise of constant communication. Because sometimes silence is the only language honesty understands. When you stop talking, he finally hears the echo of everything he ignored. Every time you reached out first, every time you checked in, every time you showed up, he feels that loss not through your absence, but through his own reflection. And if he truly cared, he'll come back differently. Not with empty promises, but with effort. Not with excuses, but with change. Because he'll understand that to have you in his life again, he needs to earn it. And if he doesn't return at all, that's not your loss. That's protection. That's the universe saying this wasn't your person. Because the right one won't need to lose you to appreciate you. The right one will already know that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. The moment you stop contacting a man, you reclaim your power. You stop performing for attention and start protecting your peace. You realize that love should never feel like waiting in line for someone's effort. It should feel mutual, balanced, and calm. Silence helps you see that. It cuts through confusion and forces truth to surface. Some truths hurt, but all truths heal. The man who steps up after silence is showing you his growth. He's showing you that he's capable of meeting your energy. The man who disappears after silence is showing you that he never intended to stay. Both teach you something. Both set you free. Because silence isn't about punishment. It's about perspective. It's about creating a moment for truth to breathe. Every time you stop contacting someone who's not matching your effort, you are choosing alignment. You are saying my heart deserves peace, not confusion. You are saying I choose to be seen, not chased. And that shift changes everything. Because the woman who knows her worth no longer begs for love. She attracts it. She doesn't chase validation. She radiates confidence. And in that energy, she becomes unforgettable. So when you stop contacting a man, remember this. The ones meant for you will not be lost through silence. They will recognize your value even in your absence. They will respect your boundaries even when it challenges them. They will understand that your distance isn't rejection, it's reflection. But the ones who only wanted your energy for their comfort will vanish. Let them. Because their silence in return is confirmation, not confusion. You don't need to explain your silence to anyone who made you feel unheard. You don't need to justify your distance to anyone who ignored your closeness. Sometimes walking away quietly is the loudest declaration of self-worth, because peace speaks in silence and real love listens. When you stop contacting a man, you're not ending something. You're beginning something new. You're beginning the chapter where your peace becomes your priority, where your standards become your boundaries, where your energy becomes sacred again. In that silence, you rediscover yourself. You realize that your happiness doesn't depend on his response. It depends on your decision to choose yourself. And when you do that, everything changes. Because a woman who values herself attracts a man who values effort. And effort is what separates temporary attention from lasting affection. So stop reaching out to prove your worth. Start being silent to protect it. If he comes back, let his consistency speak. If he doesn't, let his absence teach. Either way, you win. Because silence doesn't end love. It reveals it. And what it reveals will always lead you to peace. Silence reveals truth louder than words ever could, because in silence you remove the noise that hides real intention and you expose what is genuine and what is only pretending to be real. When you stop talking, when you stop explaining, when you stop overgiving, you start to see what someone's actions are made of. Silence is not weakness. It is power. It is the language of self-control. It is the moment when you stop fighting to be understood and start allowing reality to reveal itself. The truth about people always comes out in the quiet. When you fall back and stop reaching out, you learn who was truly holding on and who was only comfortable when you were doing the work of connection. Silence becomes a mirror. It reflects what the relationship really is. It shows who needs attention to feel secure and who can handle peace. It reveals whether the bond was built on mutual respect or emotional dependency. When you stop talking, you give space for actions to speak, and actions never lie. Silence makes you invisible to those who only valued your presence for convenience, and it makes you unforgettable to those who valued your heart for what it really is. Silence is the test that filters intentions. The one who truly cares will not rest easy in your distance. He will feel your absence. He will recognize the void your energy created. He will reach because connection matters to him. But the one who only took from you will remain still because your silence exposes that his investment was never love, it was comfort. The moment you go silent, you shift the power dynamic. You move from chasing to choosing, from proving to protecting yourself. Silence does not mean ignoring. It means you have learned that not every situation deserves your reaction. It means you are giving life space to reveal who belongs and who was only pretending to. When you stay silent long enough, you begin to hear everything that words once covered up. You start noticing the small things, the inconsistency, the hesitation, the lack of effort. You start seeing how much you were carrying the entire relationship with your effort alone. Silence gives clarity. It sharpens your discernment. It brings truth into focus. Silence will show you if a man values you or if he valued the attention you gave him. It will show you if he was with you for the connection or for the validation. Silence teaches you the difference between love and attachment, because when you fall back and he vanishes, it means his love was tied to your energy, not your essence. But when you fall back and he steps forward, it means his feelings were grounded in something deeper than attention. They were rooted in respect. Silence reveals your strength. It shows that you are not afraid to be without anyone. You are not afraid to sit in your own company. You are not afraid to wait for what is right instead of chasing what is easy. The woman who can stay silent is dangerous because she is not driven by desperation. She is driven by discernment. She is not begging for clarity. She is allowing truth to come to her. She has mastered the art of emotional self-control, and that kind of woman cannot be manipulated because she no longer reacts. She observes, she studies, she waits, she learns. Silence is not punishment, it is awareness. It is saying, I no longer need to fight for someone to understand my worth. I no longer need to argue with someone who refuses to see my value. I no longer need to explain myself to someone who was never listening. Silence is peace earned through growth. Silence heals what overtalking breaks. It resets your spirit. It reclaims your focus. It allows you to pour energy back into yourself. The longer you stay silent, the more you realize that you were never losing people. You were losing distractions. Silence creates distance, and distance creates perspective. You start to see the situation from outside the fog of emotion. And what once felt like love starts to look like lessons. What once felt like rejection starts to look like redirection. You see that not everyone who says they love you knows how to keep you, and not everyone who misses you is meant to have you back. Silence makes people confront themselves when they can no longer blame your words or your reactions. They are left alone with their own behavior, and that reflection is uncomfortable. It exposes guilt. It exposes pride. It exposes what they refused to see while you were still speaking. Silence also rebuilds your dignity. It allows you to walk away without losing your grace. It gives you strength to detach without hate. It gives you space to grow without revenge. Silence is not for the weak. It is for the wise, because it takes courage to stop explaining when your heart wants closure. It takes strength to hold back when your emotions want to lash out. It takes faith to trust that the truth will reveal itself without you having to force it. Silence reveals truth louder than any argument ever could, because it is the absence of noise that allows character to echo. When you stop talking, they start remembering. When you stop showing up, they start noticing. When you stop explaining, they start reflecting, because your silence becomes the loudest statement you will ever make. It says, I am done convincing, I am done chasing, I am done proving. And those words unsaid shake the ground of anyone who took your voice for granted. Silence teaches people that your peace is not up for negotiation. It tells them that your energy is sacred. It tells them that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. Silence turns confusion into clarity, chaos into calm, weakness into wisdom. It transforms pain into power. It rewires your focus from them to you. It takes your energy back from what drains you and uses it to rebuild what defines you. And while others wonder what you are thinking, you are busy healing. While others try to interpret your distance, you are busy growing. Silence becomes your shield against manipulation, because when you say nothing, they have nothing to twist, they have nothing to argue with, they have nothing to control. Silence gives you the advantage because it keeps your emotions private and your peace public. The moment you go silent is the moment you start hearing the truth, because everything that was hidden under charm, excuses, and manipulation starts to surface. Silence brings exposure. It forces people to show their real intentions, It makes those who care step forward and those who don't fade away. It teaches you that love should never require you to beg. It should never need you to lower your voice to be heard. Silence gives you back your power because you stop trying to change what is outside of you and start mastering what is inside of you. And that mastery attracts peace. It attracts respect. It attracts clarity. Silence is sacred because it gives you back your strength. It brings back your focus. It reminds you that you are not defined by who stays or who leaves. You are defined by how gracefully you handle both. When you learn the power of silence, you stop chasing closure. You stop chasing explanations. You stop chasing people. You start chasing purpose. You start building peace. You start becoming the version of yourself that no longer needs to talk to prove her worth. Silence reveals who values you, because when you stop speaking, they either fill the space with effort or they fill it with excuses. Either way, you learn who deserves access to your energy. Silence doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring smarter. It means you start prioritizing your peace over your pride, your growth over their games, your healing over their habits. Silence makes you magnetic because it shows that you are in control of your emotions, not ruled by them. It makes people realize they can no longer manipulate you with inconsistency. It makes them respect your absence because your energy once made their world brighter, and now they see what life feels like without it. Silence changes everything. It shifts the power back to you. It ends the cycle of explaining. It closes doors that were only leading you in circles. It turns your pain into presence and your presence into peace. Silence reveals truth louder than words ever could because it exposes everything that words once hid. And in that quiet, you find yourself again. You rediscover your strength, your worth, your calm, your clarity. And you realize that the truth you were waiting to hear from others was always inside you, waiting for you to stop talking long enough to listen. When you stop contacting a man, something inside him begins to shift. Even if he doesn't show it, even if his pride tries to hide it, he feels it in the silence. He hears it in the absence of your voice and senses it in the space that used to be filled with your energy. It's not always immediate, but it's inevitable because when you were there, your presence became a comfort, your attention became a rhythm, and your words became a reflection of what he meant in your world. When that rhythm stops, he's forced to notice what he took for granted. He starts to realize that communication was never just about words. It was about the connection that lived behind those words. It was the effort that came from your side, the care, the consistency, the warmth that spoke through every simple message, every small question, every moment you chose to reach out and check on him. He didn't always notice it when it was happening because sometimes people only understand the value of consistency when it disappears. Sometimes people only realize the meaning of silence when the sound they depended on is no longer there. When you stop reaching out, he begins to wonder why. He begins to question what changed, and somewhere between his thoughts and his ego, he starts to feel the discomfort of uncertainty. He may try to convince himself that he doesn't care, but deep down, there's a voice whispering that something feels different, something feels off. The truth is, attention is a form of affection, and when that attention is gone, it leaves a void, a space that echoes with memories he didn't think mattered until they stopped replaying in real time. He'll think about the little things, the morning messages, the random check-ins, the words of encouragement, and he'll begin to remember the way it felt to have someone genuinely care without expectation. That's when realization begins to set in, not always through guilt, but through reflection. He'll begin to understand that you were not reaching out because you were desperate. You were reaching out because you valued connection. You were building a bridge that he thought would always stand strong on its own. But bridges need both sides to hold, and when one side pulls away, the other begins to feel the imbalance. He starts to feel that imbalance emotionally and mentally. He may try to distract himself, but every time he checks his phone and doesn't see your name, every time he scrolls through old messages and feels that stillness, he's reminded that something real once existed. Something stable, something safe. It's in those moments he starts to replay his actions. He starts to wonder if his silence was mistaken for strength or if it was really neglect. He starts to think about the moments he could have said more but chose not to, the moments he could have shown up but stayed distant. He starts to see that love and effort are two sides of the same coin, and when one is missing, the other loses its shine. He begins to realize that connection doesn't fade because of time, it fades because of imbalance. When one gives and the other only receives, when one reaches out and the other stays still, when that dynamic shifts and the giver stops giving, the receiver suddenly feels the loss more deeply than he expected. He may not chase immediately because pride is loud and ego is strong, but the silence begins to challenge his sense of control. It begins to test his perception of what mattered. He starts to feel the consequences of taking emotional presence lightly. He starts to recognize that attention was not a weakness. It was love expressed through consistency, through care, through the simple act of showing up. He starts to realize that when someone stops contacting you, it's not always because they stopped caring. Sometimes it's because they got tired of feeling unseen, tired of pouring into someone who didn't pour back, tired of speaking into a silence that never echoed back the same energy. And in that realization comes a subtle form of regret, not always expressed in words, but felt in the stillness of night when his mind drifts back to you, when he replays conversations wondering where things shifted, when he reads old messages trying to feel what he used to ignore. And it's in that space between reflection and pride that growth either happens or denial takes over. He might tell himself, she'll come back. She always does. But when you don't, something begins to change. He starts to feel that control slip away. He starts to understand that love is not owed. It's earned through mutual presence, through mutual effort, through shared energy. When he no longer has yours, he starts to realize that silence is not rejection, it's a boundary. It's a declaration that you're done chasing what was never meeting you halfway. He starts to understand that peace sometimes looks like distance, that love sometimes sounds like quiet, and that the most powerful statement a woman can make is made without a single word. It's made through her absence, through her stillness, through her decision to no longer reach out. It's in that decision that he begins to learn what he didn't value. Sometimes that lesson arrives too late, but it arrives loud. It arrives in his thoughts, in his emotions, in the sudden awareness that connection, once effortless, now feels unreachable. He starts to feel the emptiness of his own silence. He starts to understand that your communication was not routine. It was love in motion. It was emotional investment disguised as simple messages. It was care translated through consistency. And when it stops, he begins to see how valuable that really was. It's not revenge, it's revelation. It's the quiet truth that when a woman withdraws her energy, it's not to punish, it's to protect. When she stops chasing, it's because she's finally realized that her peace is more valuable than her effort. And when that happens, he has two choices: to evolve or to repeat, to reflect or to blame, to grow or to lose. That's the power of silence. It speaks when words no longer can. It teaches when explanations are no longer owed. And it reveals what was hidden beneath comfort and complacency. Because when you stop contacting him, he finally learns what your presence meant. He learns that love is not guaranteed, that attention is not endless, and that the moment you choose yourself, everything shifts, everything realigns. Everything that was taken for granted becomes the very thing he wishes he could have back. And that realization comes not through arguments or words, but through stillness, through silence, through the quiet power of absence. That's when the truth finally sinks in, that love only grows where effort exists, and where effort dies, silence becomes the loudest lesson of all.